poor to better tackle the drivers of poverty, so that policymakers can allocate budgets, coordinate departments, and track progress towards reducing poverty for a better and more inclusive future.
Did you know poverty is about much more than not having enough money? It touches every aspect of my life. We were doing okay before Dad lost his job. Now, we struggle for everything. My brother needs healthcare. Our house is cold. We are anxious. My mom and dad argue a lot more. I want to be a doctor and help my community, but I'm scared I won't even finish high school. Poverty is stealing my family's future, yours too. Because poverty anywhere drags everybody down. If poverty is ended, everybody can flourish. We can break the cycle.
In a world of increasingly complex challenges like climate change and rising inequality, people are deprived in many interconnected ways. Our approach must be multidimensional. The Global Multidimensional Poverty Index complements monetary poverty by providing information for poverty reduction policies where they are most needed. Many groups who might not be income poor can, in fact, be multidimensionally poor, impacted by deprivations, such as lack of access to electricity. To make sure we don't leave anyone in those groups behind, it is crucial that they are counted. Produced by the UNDP's Human Development Report Office and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, the MPI is made up of 10 weighted indicators grouped in 3 dimensions: health, education, and living standards. A person, like Deepa, is considered multidimensionally poor if they are deprived in a third or more of the weighted indicators. The MPI resembles a stack of deprivations, and the goal is to reduce that stack to 0. The global MPI shows where poverty hits hardest and how people are poor to better tackle the drivers of poverty, so that policymakers can allocate budgets, coordinate departments, and track progress towards reducing poverty for a better and more inclusive future.
Did you know poverty is about much more than not having enough money? It touches every aspect of my life. We were doing okay before Dad lost his job. Now, we struggle for everything. My brother needs healthcare. Our house is cold. We are anxious. My mom and dad argue a lot more. I want to be a doctor and help my community, but I'm scared I won't even finish high school. Poverty is stealing my family's future, yours too. Because poverty anywhere drags everybody down. If poverty is ended, everybody can flourish. We can break the cycle.
In a world of increasingly complex challenges like climate change and rising inequality, people are deprived in many interconnected ways. Our approach must be multidimensional. The Global Multidimensional Poverty Index complements monetary poverty by providing information for poverty reduction policies where they are most needed. Many groups who might not be income poor can, in fact, be multidimensionally poor, impacted by deprivations, such as lack of access to electricity. To make sure we don't leave anyone in those groups behind, it is crucial that they are counted. Produced by the UNDP's Human Development Report Office and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, the MPI is made up of 10 weighted indicators grouped in 3 dimensions: health, education, and living standards. A person, like Deepa, is considered multidimensionally poor if they are deprived in a third or more of the weighted indicators. The MPI resembles a stack of deprivations, and the goal is to reduce that stack to zero. The Global MPI shows where poverty hits hardest and how people are poor to better tackle the drivers of poverty, so that policymakers can allocate budgets, coordinate departments, and track progress towards reducing poverty for a better and more inclusive future.
Poverty is about much more than not having enough money. It touches every aspect of my life. We were doing okay before Dad lost his job. Now, we struggle for everything. My brother needs healthcare. Our house is cold. We are anxious. My mom and dad argue a lot more. I want to be a doctor and help my community, but I'm scared I won't even finish high school. Poverty is stealing my family's future, yours too. Because poverty anywhere drags everybody down. If poverty is ended, everybody can flourish. We can break the cycle.
In a world of increasingly complex challenges like climate change and rising inequality, people are deprived in many interconnected ways. Our approach must be multidimensional. The Global Multidimensional Poverty Index complements monetary poverty by providing information for poverty reduction policies where they are most needed. Many groups who might not be income poor can, in fact, be multidimensionally poor, impacted by deprivations, such as lack of access to electricity. To make sure we don't leave anyone in those groups behind, it is crucial that they are counted. Produced by the UNDP's Human Development Report Office and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, the MPI is made up of 10 weighted indicators grouped in 3 dimensions: health, education, and living standards. A person, like Deepa, is considered multidimensionally poor if they are deprived in a third or more of the weighted indicators. The MPI resembles a stack of deprivations, and the goal is to reduce that stack to zero. The Global MPI shows where poverty hits hardest and how people are poor to better tackle the drivers of poverty, so that policymakers can allocate budgets, coordinate departments, and track progress towards reducing poverty for a better and more inclusive future.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, both here and online. Welcome to the global launch of the 2024 Multidimensional Poverty Index report, developed by the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, or OPHI. I am Kankonrak Tham, a communication officer from UNDP here in Thailand, and I will be an MC for the launch. We are honored to have participants from Bangkok, from New York, from other cities, and many countries around the world as we come together to discuss crucial insights and solutions for no poverty as part of sustainable development. For those who are joining us through Zoom webinar, you can select the language on the interpretation button. For those who are joining us through YouTube, we are broadcasting in English. For those who are joining us through Facebook, we have 2 live streams. You can select either in English or in Thai. And for those who are joining us here, you can select the channel 1 and 2 for the language selection on your translator too. สวัสดีแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะคะขอต้อนรับทุกท่านนะคะ
Good afternoon. Welcome everyone into global launch of 2024 Multidimensional Poverty Index report from UNDP and also the Oxford Office of Poverty and Human Development Initiative. I am Kankonrak Tham. I'm going to be the MC for this afternoon.
UNDP resident representative to Thailand to deliver welcoming remarks. Please welcome.
Sawadika, and thank you everybody in person and especially online as well today for joining us for the launch of this Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. To the NESDC team and Secretary General Danusha, who's arriving shortly, Professor Sabina Alkiri, the Director of the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative at Oxford University, to my colleague Yanchun Zhang, the Chief Statistician from UNDP's Human Development Report Office, and all esteemed ambassadors, guests, and colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us for the launch of this report, Poverty Amid Conflict. This is the first time that we've hosted this important conversation outside of New York, and we're excited to do so here in Bangkok. And the details, the insights that this report provides come at a critical juncture. 1.1 billion people still live in acute poverty worldwide. 40% of those people live in war, in conflict, or without peace. Half of them are children under the age of 18. Half of them lack electricity, and half of them live in a household where nobody has completed even 6 years of schooling. Excellencies, participants, there is a reason why the eradication of poverty in all of its forms is the first among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Poverty is about more than just money. It's about healthcare. It's about being able to go to school. It's about being able to turn on the light to be able to do your schoolwork in the evening. As the UN Secretary General said, to mark International Day for the Eradication of Poverty on the 17th of October, poverty is a plague, and it should be relegated to the annals of history. Now, the good news is that it actually can be. And today, we're going to explore a little bit more about what that would take. The Multidimensional Poverty Index report, which is jointly published by the United Nations Development Programme and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, maps the many faces of poverty across 112 countries and 6.3 billion people. Rather than labeling countries as rich or poor, the index goes beyond income to consider the 10 different ways in which people experience deprivation, including, as I said, education, health, electricity, but also housing, drinking water, sanitation. And in doing so, it helps decision makers to make more targeted choices with their resources to get better results. Now, 3 main messages emerge from this report, and we'll go into each of them in more detail shortly. But the first is indeed that GDP alone is not a sufficient measure of progress against poverty. This is particularly true when we're looking at middle-income countries around the world. The second is that disparity runs deep within countries still. 28% of the global rural population is poor when we consider the multidimensional data, compared with just 6.6% of the urban population. And perhaps the third and most important message coming out of this new data is that the pursuit of peace is fundamental to any efforts to make poverty history. Today, at least for the last year for which we have data, so for 2023, we have more wars and conflict raging than at any time since World War II. Multidimensional poverty rates are, on average, 3 times higher in a country without peace. Where there is peace, this report calls on all decision makers to take urgent action to protect it and to prevent the outbreak of conflict, which destroys lives, shatters infrastructure, rolls back progress, and balloons development costs. And where conflict has already broken out, the authors call for combined attention on poverty alleviation, humanitarian action, and peace building, working together to find a way forward. As the first country to host the launch of this Multidimensional Poverty Index, something that all of our UNDP teams in the 170 countries around the world will now take up from here, it's a pleasure to say that Thailand has made remarkable progress in tackling the multiple dimensions of poverty. Thailand halved the number of people living in multidimensional poverty in just 7 years. The numbers dropped from 909,000 in 2012 to 416,000 in 2019 and declined further to 352,000 people living in multidimensional poverty by 2022. Now, this action is attributed to higher years in school, improved nutrition, better housing, cooking fuel, and basic infrastructure. Thailand's MPI score, indeed, came amongst the lowest of all the 7 ASEAN countries covered in the report, and in this case, a low score is good progress. Nevertheless, there are gaps. And in line with the global picture, the challenges remain at the subnational and the rural level. Therefore, even here in Thailand, ending poverty in all its forms requires a mixture of working at the national, subnational, and the local level. The continued efforts to prevent conflict, to address the differences in intensity and composition of poverty. Now, the insights that we see in the Multidimensional Poverty Index with respect to Thailand are consistent with Thailand's new National Human Development Report, which itself puts an emphasis on the importance of peace-building processes and people-centered approaches at the heart of how public institutions, private organizations, and citizens collaborate to make poverty history. By tackling the root causes and consequences of poverty with better data and with strong determination, the people who suffer those many faces of poverty have a better chance to build lives and communities. As the SDG integrator within the UN system, UNDP has supported countries in deploying a whole of government and whole of society approach to tackling the complex development challenges beyond national, but also looking at subnational poverty levels. UNDP Thailand is very pleased to be working closely with the Ministry of the Interior on its SDG localization program, mapping, as we have now, 15 provinces for their SDG profiles, with the hope that this will go to all 76+1 provinces here across Thailand. And again, this will enable more tailored strategies to ultimately eradicate poverty. I'm very pleased today, colleagues, both that we have an inline and an in-person and online international audience. And to kick us off, we're going to start with a short recording of a message from our UNDP administrator, Achim Steiner. Then we're going to move to a presentation on the Global MPI report by Professor Sabina Akire, Director of the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative at Oxford University, and our Chief Statistician of our Human Development Report Office, Ms. Yanshun Zhang. We're delighted that we'll then turn to a special lecture from Mr. Danusha, the Secretary General, Office of National Economic and Social Development Council, on peace, poverty eradication, and Thailand's way forward. And then we'll move to a panel discussion together with experts from the field who have kindly joined us today to bring their experiences on the challenges and opportunities that we face in addressing poverty amid conflict. Finally, I'd like to thank the Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, the National Economic and Social Development Council, and all our partners for their continued collaboration in alleviating poverty and driving sustainable development in Thailand. A particular thanks to the speakers, panelists, and participants today for enriching our discussion. I look forward to a fruitful conversation. Khop khun ka.
Thank you so much, Neve, for your remarks that clearly address poverty in multiple dimensions. So next, we will hear a key message from Mr. Achim Steiner, the UNDP administrator, through this video presentation.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I regret that I'm unable to join you live for the launch of the 2024 Multidimensional Poverty Index report, or MPI, on this occasion. I am, however, delighted to share some brief thoughts via this video message. The MPI was first introduced in the 2010 Human Development Report, and since the year 2018 it has been jointly calculated by UNDP's Human Development Report Office and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. In many ways, the MPI has transformed our understanding of poverty. Rather than simply classifying individuals as poor or not poor based on how many dollars they earn per day, the MPI focuses on the deprivations that people experience in their daily lives. Using household-level data, the MPI examines whether people have access to essential resources such as adequate nutrition, electricity, and clean cooking fuel, while also assessing if children are in school or have access to safe drinking water. Using this lens, we find that 1.1 billion people worldwide are living in multidimensional poverty. We can also better understand where poverty is located, including within countries, and sometimes even within families. For instance, nearly 50% of the world's multidimensionally poor people live today in sub-Saharan Africa. And perhaps counterintuitively, some 2/3 live in middle-income countries. This analysis also demonstrates the inroads that are being made in our efforts to eradicate poverty. 76 out of 86 countries analyzed have shown a reduction in MPI values. To take just one example, Benin has reduced its poverty rate from 66% of the population between 2017/18 to 56% between the year 2021/22. What is unique about this year's report is also that for the first time it examines the intersection between poverty and violent conflict. It shows that some 455 million multidimensionally poor people live in countries experiencing conflict, fragility, or, in inverted commas, low peacefulness. Indeed, on average, poverty rates are over 3 times higher in countries experiencing wars relative to countries not experiencing conflict. And that may seem self-evident to some, but it bears repeating because of the extent and the degree to which conflict is, in fact, in our societies today, causing enormous suffering, but also poverty. To give a real-world reflection of this, while 6% of people in non-conflict affected countries are poor and lack electricity, this proportion goes up to 27% of the population in war-affected countries. This report also explores case studies such as in Afghanistan, where prolonged conflict and instability have resulted in over half the population living in poverty. Such data is helping to drive support to where it is needed most. UNDP's assistance in Afghanistan today has allowed nearly 23 million people to access essential services like water, energy, and livelihood support since the year 2021, providing a vital lifeline amid ongoing instability and growing desperation. This includes supporting women-led businesses, contributing to nearly 1 million jobs for women and young people, and a means to provide a real pathway out of poverty. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, finally, on behalf of UNDP, let me also express my sincere gratitude to colleagues at the University of Oxford for their deeply valued partnership on this unique initiative. They bring a professional rigor and commitment that is second to none to this task. By examining poverty at the micro-household level, the MPI is shedding new light not only on who the poor are, but how they are poor, and perhaps most importantly in terms of consequence, what policies are most effective to address their unique circumstances. The fact that 40% of the world's multidimensionally poor live in regions scarred by conflict and fragility also reminds us to redouble our efforts to reach this last mile, and most importantly, by stopping conflicts and wars. It also reminds us that peace remains the fertile soil of progress, the nurturing ground where people can plant the seeds of opportunity and escape the barren landscape of poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Achim Steiner. So, the Multidimensional Poverty Index emphasizes that we must address poverty in multiple dimensions beyond income, which we will further explore the key findings of the report in the next session. We are now pleased to welcome Professor Sabina Alkaya, Director of the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, or OPHI, at the University of Oxford, and Ms. Yan Chun Chan, Chief Statistician of the Human Development Report Office at UNDP, to present key findings from the 2024 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report, featuring the theme Poverty Amid Conflict. Please welcome.
Thank you so much. The 2024 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report has some key findings that I will present. The conflict theme, which Yan Chun Zhang from UNDP's Human Development Report Office will present, and then a few findings from ASEAN for Southeast Asia. But we start with a human story, because that is our topic. Nyakume lives in a camp in Mangatin, an internally displaced persons camp outside Juba in South Sudan. She's 22 years old. She lives with her father, stepmother, 7 siblings, and 4 extended family members, including a disabled cousin. Their house is of poles, of wood, of bamboo, of plastic tarps. Their household contains people who are undernourished, and the children are not attending school, although her father has a college degree, but now works as a security guard in a non-governmental organization. They cook with wood and charcoal. They lack sanitation. Their water is an hour's walk away, and they have to stand in a queue. They don't have electricity, and their only assets are 2 mobile phones. They don't have a radio. They don't have a television, a refrigerator, an animal cart, a computer, a bicycle, or a motorcycle. So they're deprived in assets. As you can see from the figure, they're deprived in 2/3 of the indicators of the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index. And if you're deprived in 1/3 or more, you are poor. So this is how poverty is measured, and Nyakuma and her family are poor. The 2024 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report that covers 112 countries draws on multiple indicator cluster surveys for 55 countries, demographic and health surveys for 44 countries, and national surveys for 13 countries. We are grateful to the survey providers for this high quality and disaggregated data. And 20 countries have new data sets that were updated in this year's global MPI. So now for 90% of the poor people, the data are in the SDG period. For 60%, they are from 2019 or more recent. But we only have 19 countries' data that is from 2021, 2022, or more recently. So we continue to call on the data revolution not to leave poverty data behind. Across those 112 countries and 6.3 billion people living in the developing world, 1.1 billion live in acute multidimensional poverty. 84% of them wake up in rural areas, and 83% in sub-Saharan Africa, where nearly half the poor people live, or South Asia, where 35% of them live. And nearly 2/3 of them live in middle-income countries, 1/3 in low-income countries. Of the 1.1 billion poor people, 1/2, 584 million people, are children who have not celebrated their 18th birthday. Among children, 27.9% of people are poor, whereas among adults, it's 13.5%. And this isn't just the case in the poorest countries. In the figure you see, the black dot shows the percentage of people who are poor, the least poor in the top left and the poorest in the bottom right. Levels of multidimensional poverty go from 0 to 91% across all covered countries. And the red bar shows the percentage of poor people in each country who are children. And it's highest, of course, in the poorest countries. But on the top left, if you look at Argentina or Jordan or Tonga or Turkmenistan, in each of those countries, like in Thailand, less than 1% of people who are poor. But in each of those countries, over half of the poor people are children. So looking at children is a priority across all of the countries we cover. And if you look at how people are poor, each of the 10 indicators contributes significantly to poverty. Nearly 1 billion people lack clean cooking fuel and are poor. Over 800 million are poor and lack sanitation or quality housing. 637 million share their household with an undernourished person, and half of them lack electricity, lack anyone with 6 years of schooling. So each of these indicators is an important feature of poverty in its many dimensions. But of course, this varies. Across world regions, poverty is highest in sub-Saharan Africa, where on average 48% of people are poor. But within sub-Saharan Africa, countries range from 1% in Seychelles to 91% in Niger. And within a country like Burkina Faso, affected at some periods by conflict, poverty varies from 21% to 88% across subnational regions. This year's report covers 1,359 subnational regions. And you see the stripes. Those are the indicator composition of poverty, and they vary across and within countries. So policies to fight poverty cost effectively must look at those profiles of deprivations. But how has poverty changed? This year we have strictly harmonized trends for 86 countries, around 6 billion people. And in 76 of those countries, there's been a statistically significant reduction of MPI in at least one period. In 17 countries, we have trends that end in 21 or 2022 or 2023. MPI increased in Afghanistan. In 7 countries, there was no change. Poverty did not go down. In 9 countries, there was a statistically significant reduction. For example, in Benin, which had the fastest reduction of those countries, from 2017-18 to 2021-2022, the incidence of MPI fell from 66 to 56% of the people. All 10 of its indicators decreased significantly, led by electricity and drinking water reductions. The poorest region, Alibori, in which 89% of people were poor initially, had the fastest MPI reduction of all. So it was not leaving the poorest behind. And children are the poorest, but also had faster reduction. And this is more laudable because in the previous period, poverty did not reduce in Benin. And yet, there's still a ways to go before we sleep, with 56% of people still being poor. I now turn over to Yanshin.
Thank you very much, Sabina. Good afternoon. Welcome to the presentation of our 2024 Global MPI Report. As an annual publication, every year we update the Global MPI report numbers in this report. But we also pick a thematic topic, exploring the relationship between global MPI data and some related data. Then this year, we select the topic of conflict. Why conflict? Because conflict has been surging in the recent years. Then we know conflict and poverty feed into each other, creating a vicious cycle. So in this year's report, we overlay the global MPI data and conflict data to study the links between multidimensional poverty and conflict, exploring how poverty differs in countries experiencing conflicts. We have 4 key findings. The first one, a disproportionate number of poor people live in conflict settings. As Leif, our administrator, and Sabina already mentioned, among the 1.1 billion multidimensional poor people, nearly 40% live in conflicts, fragility, or low peacefulness. That's about 455 million people. If we take those countries experience war, we see globally 10% of the population live in these war-affected countries, but 19% of the multidimensional poor people live in these countries affected by war. The second key finding, the incidence of poverty is highest in conflict-affected states. In our report, we use UPSELA Conflict Data Program as our primary data source, but we also use World Bank list of fragile and conflict situations, as well as the International Peace Index by Institute of Economics and Peace and Economics as our secondary data sources. Then all these 3 data sets show that the poverty rate is highest in the countries experiencing conflicts. So when we use the UPSELA Conflict Data Program database, you can see the poverty rate in the countries experiencing war is more than 3 times than those countries not affected by war, 34.8% versus 10.9%. If we look at the World Bank's list of fragility and conflict situations, 45.1% poverty rate versus 14.7%. Then if we look at the International Peace Index, those countries suffering very low or low IEP scores, the poverty rate 34.7% versus 15.7%. If we look at the MPI values, here we use UPSELA Conflict Data Program database, for example. Then here we line up the countries by their MPI values by 3 different groups. Countries experienced war, countries in minor conflicts, and all other countries. Then the red dots here are the average MPI score of the countries in each of the 3 groups. It's very clear countries in each, here you can see the average MPI value of countries affected by war is the highest. That's the bottom line. But it's also worthy to point out, here you can see countries in each group have a broad range of global MPI values, which indicates conflict is one of the drivers of poverty, but not the only one. Then the third finding we present in the report is deprivations are higher in conflict-affected countries. If you look at the graph shows the percentage of population who are poor and deprived in each of the 10 global MPI indicators. So again, we are using the UNDP database. We are grouping countries in 3 categories: experiencing war, in minor conflict, and all others. So here, the red bars are those countries experiencing war. Then here, again, it's very clear countries at war have higher deprivation in every multidimensional poverty index indicator. Deprivations in indicators such as nutrition, electricity, drinking water, and sanitation are some of the most pronounced. Then the fourth, also the last key finding presented in the report is conflict hinders poverty reduction. Our analysis does show poverty reduction still takes place in countries experiencing conflicts, but the pace of poverty reduction is much slower. If you look at the graph top graph on the right, you see the absolute MPI value reduction for countries experiencing war is smaller than countries in minor conflict, is the same as countries not affected by any conflicts. But remember, those countries experiencing war have much higher MPI values to start with, much higher poverty to start with. Then if you look at the bottom graph on the right, you see in terms of percentage, countries experiencing war reduce their MPI value by 3 percentage points per year, compared to 7.8% in countries not affected by war, or 8% by countries in minor conflict. So we concluded the size of the annual step towards zero poverty was far smaller in war-affected countries than in others. So this indicates a conflict really makes eradicating poverty, achieving SDG 1, ending poverty in all its forms, a bigger challenge. Then in this year's report, we also feature Afghanistan. We feature how multidimensional poverty has evolved in conflict-affected Afghanistan over the period 2015-2016 to 2022-2023. So we have these two surveys available to do the trend analysis that over the majority of this period, the conflicts in the country has intensified. Then the left graph shows there's a significant increase in Afghanistan multidimensional poverty in terms of both MPI values, but also in terms of poverty rate, the incidence of poverty. So the poverty rate increased by more than 5 percentage points, translating to more than 5 million additional people falling into multidimensional poverty. Then if we look at the rural versus urban divide, before the conflicts, rural poverty is much higher than urban poverty. Then during this period, then the increase in poverty was driven by worsening conditions in both urban and rural areas. But the poverty rate in urban areas increased by 3.8% versus 6.3% in the rural areas. So the divide is enlarging. Then if we look at the multidimensional poverty for children and adults, we also see during these two survey periods, the children poverty rate increased by 7 percentage points, while adult percentage point increased by 3. Then the last graph I will show you is the one on the right. It presents deprivations in Afghanistan, increase in almost all the indicators. So here we have 8 indicators because missing data for nutrition and cooking field. But here you can see the most deprivations shows in educational deprivations and access deprivation. It's worthy to mention that if you look at the third indicator, school attendance, it shows the households with out-of-school children increased from 35% to 43.8%. So with additional ban of young girls to go schooling, then it implies a potential lost decade for young women in Afghanistan for educational opportunity. Now I will hand back to Sabina for additional slides on Southeast Asia.
The Global MPI 2024 covers 112 countries, and 7 of these countries pertain to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. And on average, 6.5% of people in these countries are poor, but it ranges from the lowest in Thailand with 2022 data at 0.5% living in acute multidimensional poverty, to 38.3% in Myanmar, 2015-16 data. Lao PDR and Indonesia have data from 2017, so also a little bit older. We see that the levels vary considerably. And in Thailand, 350,000 people live in acute multidimensional poverty, though as we heard, this was cut by more than 1/2 in the measured time periods we have. An example of reduction is the case of Cambodia, where in 2021-2022, 16.6% of people are poor. And this varies from 6% in the subnational region on the far left to 49%, 49.6% in the region on the far right. Children are poorer, with 20.5% of them being poor. And in female-headed households, poverty is also higher, 18.9%. But as you see, if you look across the regions of Cambodia, the indicator composition of poverty varies a lot. The mauve-colored bands reflect the education deprivations, and the blue ones the standard of living. And they vary, so the same policies to reduce poverty are not applicable in all the different regions. The Global MPI gives some information that can be used to address these. And positively, in the 7.5 years that ended in this period, Cambodia cut its multidimensional poverty by half, falling from 36.7% to 16.6%. And so it has, again, already had a major reduction, though there's still a ways to go. So far, we have been speaking about the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, which creates as comparable a metric as we are able to, using the same 3 dimensions and 10 indicators for every included country. But it measures acute multidimensional poverty, and some of the ASEAN countries, including Thailand, have very low levels of acute MPI. And so in these countries, it's very useful to report the global MPI almost as an encouragement to show that multidimensional poverty can reach low levels. But in those countries, the impoverished people and communities and the governments themselves have more ambitious targets when it comes to recognizing and fighting poverty. And many countries across the world now make official national MPIs, whose dimensions and indicators reflect national priorities and definitions of poverty. And these national MPIs are used for targeting, for budget allocation, for coordinating multi-sectoral integrated policies effectively, and for reporting to Sustainable Development Goal Indicator Database. Among ASEAN countries, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam all report national MPIs in this way. And we will recognize them, and we will hear more from Secretary General Danucha about the experience of Thailand when it comes to their national MPI. To conclude, I'd like to direct on-site and in-person observers to the websites of the Human Development Report Office in UNDP, which not only has this year's global MPI report, but also has data exploration. So you can go to their website and obtain different ways of understanding MPI comparisons across countries and at the indicator compositions. Similarly, the Global MPI website of the University of Oxford's OPHI Research Centre covers the report and detailed data tables, including of disaggregations, as well as Stata-Do files for students and country briefings. And so we hope that you will use the information of the global MPI where it is pertinent to understand multidimensional poverty, to understand how it varies across and within countries, and to use this information in your own analysis to think with imagination, with creativity, and with commitment of how to play different roles in reducing acute multidimensional poverty, or, if your country has them, reducing national MPIs. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sabina and Ms. Yan Chun, so much for sharing these crucial insights and approaches to address these multidimensional challenges, especially in the area affected by conflict. After seeing the overview of multidimensional index at the global level, next I would like to invite Mr. Danusha Pichayanan, Secretary General of Thailand's National Economic and Social Development Council, to deliver a special lecture on peace, poverty eradication, and Thailand's way forward. Please welcome.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't think this is a lecture. I'm just thinking that this is the kind of information that I have to inform all of you about what we're doing in terms of national MPI. And first of all, my presentation will comprise of 6 categories, which are the first one. I'd like to inform all of you about how Thailand developed our national MPI, and secondly, what is the national MPI tells us during the time we developed it. And the third one is about the child MPI that we have developed to address the problems occur to our children. And the fourth one is the platform that we developed in connection with the MPI to identify individuals and households in the provinces more accurately. And after that, we will explore how the MPI can be used to design and implement evidence-based policies and to reduce the poverty. And lastly, it's all about what we are going to do after we know everything. So first of all, let me start with our Thailand national MPI. Well, actually in 2012, our office, with the support from the UNDP Thailand and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, piloted the development of the Multidimensional Poverty Index, or MPI, for Thailand. This tool was designed to enhance poverty monitoring by providing more holistic definition, capturing multiple forms of deprivation beyond incomes. The MPI reflects poverty across several dimensions and was first analyzed in the Poverty and Inequality Report using data from the 2011 National Household Socioeconomic Survey. The initial analysis focused on the elderly population, which is age 60 and above, and assessed 4 key dimensions, which are the health, economic status, education, and living conditions. In 2018, this approach contributed to the creation of the Thai People Map and Analytic Platform, which TP Map in short. This platform is our strategic tools enabling the identification of target groups for improvement of their well-being at individual, household, community, and the provincial levels. And in 2019, the NSDC, with support from UNICEF Thailand and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative recognize that children aged around 0 to 17 has experienced a unique form of deprivation. Therefore, we introduced the Child Multidimensional Poverty Index. This Child MPI based on data from multiple indicators cluster survey, and it was published as an independent report to highlight and address child-specific poverty indicators. In the same year, NSDC extended the Multidimensional Poverty Index to the national scale, marking Thailand's first comprehensive evaluation and multidimensional poverty. This refined MPI utilized data from the 2017 Socioeconomic Survey, providing an in-depth national perspective on poverty across multiple dimensions. Well, since then, MPI has been institutionalized into NSDC, and in which national MPI and Child MPI would be produced. National MPI and Child MPI report would be produced and published on a regular basis. We published it twice already in 2021 and 2023, and we released we presenting the latest poverty data for both the national MPI and Child MPI. And this update provides essential insight to guide policy and intervention aim to reduce the poverty across all dimensions. And let me turn to the national MPI. For Thailand national MPI, we use as I mentioned earlier, we use the Socioeconomic Survey to measure deprivation across 4 dimensions: education, health, living condition, and financial security. Within each dimension, there are 3 specific indicators selected to assess the level of deprivation. The result of the national MPI suggests that despite progress in reducing monetary poverty, 6.14 million individuals in Thailand, or around 8.7% of the population, continue to experience multidimensional poverty in 2023. With an MPI of 0.032, the high intensity level of 37% highlights a pressing issue that demands immediate attention. A key contributor to these persistent challenges is the dimension of living condition, which account around 36% of the overall MPI. With the MPI data at the provincial level, the national MPI highlights a very significant disparity in poverty across Thailand's provinces. As you can see, Narathiwat, Surin, Mae Hong Son, Pattani, and Yala are ranked among the provinces with the highest MPI. Conversely, if you see Nonthaburi, Rayong, Samut Prakan, and Bangkok, and Nakhon Pathom, they are ranked among the provinces with the lowest MPI. Well, a striking observation is that 4 of the top 5 provinces with the highest MPI are located in the border area, and this border area has faced 3 major challenges. The first one is limited access to essential services. Well, this includes healthcare, education, and social welfare programs. The second challenge is the economic constraint, where fewer job opportunities and lower income level can hinder economic growth. And the third challenge is infrastructure deficit. poor transportation and communication infrastructure can isolate communities. And these factors contribute to a more severe multidimensional poverty situation in border provinces compared to central and urban area. And I would like to bring your attention to these 4 provinces of concern, as they exhibit both high MPI values and a slower rate of poverty reduction compared to other regions over the past decade. This issue is particularly pronounced in Pattani and Narathiwat, two of the three provinces in the southern border region where unrest has occurred from time to time. The ongoing insurgency has resulted in deprivation across multi-dimensions. People in these regions struggle with limited access to food, water, and assets, largely due to the unrest and violence that have stifled economic growth and reduced household incomes. The economic impact further restrict job opportunities and discourage investment, and while physical infrastructure suffer damage and worsen living standard. This poverty cycle hinders access to essential resources, making improvement and in quality of life difficult to achieve. And to effectively tackle the deep-rooted and persistent nature of poverty in this area, I think the targeted problem-solving approach are necessary. This multifaceted impact of conflict underscore the importance of tailored poverty reduction strategies of these provinces. And as for the Chai MPI, we in SDC, in collaboration with UNICEF Thailand, also construct a Chai MPI to accurately reflect the unique challenges faced by Thai children, drawing on insights from the government agencies, academia, and NGOs, leveraging data from the multi-indicators cluster survey. It encompasses 4 key dimensions, which are the education, child welfare, living standard, and health, assessed through 10 indicators, realizing different needs and deprivation for children at different ages. Child MPI also incorporates such differences into a choice of indicator. And as you can see, the Child MPI in Thailand shows a decline between 2016 to 2019, indicating the progress in reducing child poverty. However, in 2019, around 22% of children were still living in multidimensional poverty, equivalent to more than 1 in every 5 children in the country. The intensity of poverty, which reflects the average number of deprivation experienced by poor children, was around 33%. This means that on average, each child living in multidimensional poverty faces approximately 1/3 of all deprivation in Thailand. The Child MPI score in 2019 was around 0.0717, derived by multiplying the incidence, which is the proportion of children living in multidimensional poverty, by the intensity, which is the average number of deprivation they experience. Among the major dimensions, education emerged as the largest contributor to child poverty, followed by the health dimension. And when we examine child poverty across different regions, a very clear picture has emerged. The northeastern region bear the highest burden with a child MPI poverty rate around 28%, followed by the south. And it's important to highlight that children in the southern part of Thailand experience a higher intensity of deprivation. Turning our attention to the age group, we can see that the youngest children, those under 5 years old, are most affected by multidimensional poverty. This is primarily due to challenges in early childhood education. But in general, education plays a very pivotal role in driving child poverty. For children under 5, education-related deprivation contributes to over 60% of the overall child MPI. And for the age around 15 to 17 age group, education accounts for more than 50% of the deprivation. And however, the silver lining exists. The 5 to 14 age group shows minimal contribution from education. This can be contributed to the success of Thailand's 15 years free education program, which has significantly reduced the educational barriers for children within this age range. And let me talk about our platform, the TPMAP MPI. As I mentioned earlier, that we developed this platform in connection with MPI to accurately identify individuals, households, and communities in provincial level. That time we developed this platform, the Thai People Map and analytic platform with a data-driven approach to ensure that development efforts are focused on those most in need, enabling effective resources allocation and timely intervention. And this is what we use in the TP map. And as you can see, the TP map leverage detailed basic minimum need data collected annually by the Community Development Department to identify target poor household. Using this data, the platform calculate the multidimensional poverty index across 5 dimensions and 17 indicators, providing more precise and targeted approach to poverty reduction effort. And what we have done so far in using MPI for policy initiative, well, at a macro level, the MPI serves as a powerful tool for monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of national development initiatives, including progress on SDG 1.2 and the objective of the 13th National Economic and Social Development Plan, which provide a comprehensive framework for tracking advancement and identifying areas where intervention may need to be strengthened. And at the micro level, the TPMAP MPI was initially introduced in selected provinces as a pilot project to support targeted poverty elevation efforts. Utilizing TP maps details individual level data, the TP map logbook emerged as an innovative policy tools, empowering local authorities to identify and address development needs at both household and individual levels. Through this tool, officials can deliver precisely targeted assistance and track its effectiveness. Following the successful of pilot program, the TP map was scaled up nationwide as part of the poverty eradication and life cycle development framework, which is launched by our former Prime Minister, General Prayut Chan-o-cha, on October 30th, 2020. The poverty eradication and life cycle development framework serves as a comprehensive policy designed to eradicate poverty, reduce inequality, and foster human development across all stages of life. It aims to implement integrated, concrete, and sustainable solution nationwide. To achieve this, the poverty eradication and life cycle development leverage the government big data system, the TP map, which is a TP map, to pinpoint a specific location and challenges faced by targeted population. This data-driven approach empowers policymakers and local authorities to develop and implement tailored policies and intervention. And lastly, what we are going to do in the near future to enhance the MPI utilization for poverty eradication in Thailand. Our office has identified 3 key strategic actions. The first one is utilize MPI insights to inform policy and intervention. We aim to harness MPI findings to shape policies and interventions that directly address multidimensional poverty and improve overall quality of life in alignment with the Thailand National Development Goals. This approach ensures that policies and data-driven and target the root cause of poverty effectively. And secondly, to enhance the indicators and data collection for precision targeting. And this is to improve the precision of poverty targeting. We dedicated to refining indicators and strengthening data collection methods. This includes developing robust metrics to measure policy impact, allowing for accurate tracking of progress and timely adjustment to optimize outcomes. And the last one, to apply MPI as a local development mechanism. We also aim to deploy MPI as a tools for local development, customizing policy approaches to address a specific regional challenge. For example, in Thailand, 3 southern border provinces, as I mentioned, MPI data will inform development policies that promote stability, drive economic growth, and foster peace, ensuring that intervention are precisely aligned with the distinct needs of the communities. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, as I bring this presentation to a close, I trust that I have demonstrated the significance of the MPI as an essential tool for policy formulation at the National Economic and Social Development Council. Unlike a conventional poverty measure, the MPI offers a comprehensive perspective by analyzing dimensions such as education, health, and living standard. This approach enables us to precisely identify and address the unique challenges faced by various communities, allowing for targeted and impactful policy solution. Our office application of the MPI enhance our policy prioritization efforts and advance our progress towards sustainable development objective. And I hope that our experience and insights will prove valuable for you somehow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Danusha. Please remain on the stage for the photo session. Thank you, Mr. Danusha, very much for unpacking MPI index across Thailand, reflecting the local challenges and solutions need to be addressed. So next, I would like to invite our UNDP resident representative to Thailand, Ms. Neve Kohler-Smith, to present the gift to Mr. Danusha. Please welcome. And next, I would like to invite following distinguished guests for the photo sessions. Please, both of you remain on the stage first. Next, I would like to invite Rina Goyunawat, Deputy UNDP Resident Representative to Thailand, Professor Sabina Alkaya, Director of the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative at the University of Oxford, Ms. Yan Chun Chan, Chief Statistician of the Human Development Report Office at UNDP, Dr. Ulrich Schmidt, Manager of the World Bank Thailand and Myanmar, Associate Professor Sompop Mana Rangsan, President of Panyapiwat Institute of Management, Ms. Warangkhana Ratanarat, Country Program Director of WECOF, Ms. Thanchanok Jongyot Ying, Chief News Editor from TNN, and Mr. Fayaz Masjid Kazi, Ambassador of the People's Republic of Bangladesh to Thailand, Mr. Patricio Powell, Ambassador of Chile to Thailand, Ms. Vidyanti Edirinsin, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka to ESCAP, representatives from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, please, as well as representative from Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, chairperson and members of the Thai Parliament Committee, could you please stand like this? Okay, and smile to the camera, please. Okay, thank you very much for the photo session. Thank you everyone for the introduction to the MPI index, the Global MPI Index of 2024. And we will now take a 15-minute break. Please enjoy the refreshment and we will resume shortly at 2:30 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. It is now time for our panel discussion on global lessons and implications for Thailand. This panel will explore different perspectives of our panelists from various fields and industries on sustainable development, poverty eradication, and peace. Towards the end of the panel, we will also open the floor for questions. Our team is monitoring both online and in-person requests. So for those who are joining online, please feel free to submit questions through a chat box. And for those who are with us here, you can raise your hand during a Q&A session. So next, I am pleased to invite our distinguished panelists. The first one, I would like to invite Dr. Ulrich Schmidt, the manager of World Bank Thailand and Myanmar. Please welcome. And the next one, Associate Professor Sompop Mana Rangsan, President of Panyapiwat Institute of Management. Please welcome. And next, I would like to invite Ms. Warangkhana Ratanarat, Country Program Director of RECOF. Please welcome. We are also having a panelist joining us online. I would like to welcome Ms. Finda Koroma, Chief Executive Officer of Africa Human Capital Development Plus, and the Executive Director of FK Consulting, who will join us online. Good afternoon from Bangkok, Ms. Finda. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Ms. Thanchanok Chongyodyin, Chief News Editor from TNN, our moderator for this panel discussion. So now, Ms. Thanchanok, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Khun Kanglon, and please take a seat. Thank you so much to the UNDP to have me here as the moderator for this special panel discussion on global lessons and implications for Thailand. As we see a few minutes ago before the coffee break, that you see the global report already, and also the information about Thai MPI as well. So now it's time to dig down, the challenges behind the report, and also what we could have done or what we could do in the future to be able to reach the objectives of poverty eradication. So I have 4 panelists here, and say hi to Ms. Finda as well. Let's begin with the first question, which focused on the bottleneck of the challenges that we have been listening to a few minutes ago. So we start with Ms. Finda. Could you please elaborate on the interlinkage between conflict and poverty in the African context, and how the conflict poses additional layers of challenges to the efforts of eradicating poverty, please? Did you hear us? We couldn't hear you.
Good morning.
Okay, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate UNDP and Oxford University for the launch of this important report. In terms of the linkage between conflict and instability, it is really clear, and poverty eradication, it's really clear that, ongoing conflicts and fragility remain the most significant obstacles to poverty reduction. Conflict directly impacts poverty reduction by destroying infrastructure, disrupting services, and displacing communities. Countries affected by conflict have seen poverty reduction rates stall and even regress. Another issue are the resource constraints. Limited financial resources, particularly in low-income countries, constrain sustained investment in human capital and infrastructure, which is exacerbated by conflict. Again, weak governance caused by conflict, or that result in conflict, poor governance and institutional weaknesses make it challenging to implement effective poverty reduction programs and ensure the equitable distribution of resources. Another issue are the data gaps. Effective poverty reduction relies on reliable data, yet conflict-affected and remote areas often lack updated data, potentially underestimating the poverty in these regions. Finally, global economic pressures, the rising cost of living, global inflation, reduced foreign aid due to competing priorities hinder poverty alleviation and have a strain on these developing economies. Again, in conflict settings, the additional challenges are human capital disruptions. We all know that in conflict areas, education and health services are often inaccessible, which leads to high rates of high school dropouts, malnutrition, and limited access to healthcare. Economic isolation, conflict zones often face economic blockades or sanctions that cut off access to resources, limiting livelihood opportunities and impeding local economic growth. The earlier speaker spoke about loss of infrastructure. In the case of Africa, it's really essential infrastructure like water systems, schools, and healthcare facilities that are affected during conflicts. Displacement, forced migration, and refugee crisis place millions in situations of extreme poverty, limiting their access to employment, housing, and social services. And of course, two remaining issues, the psychological trauma. Conflict-induced trauma impacts mental health, reduces people's ability to participate in economic activities or invest in their personal development, and lastly, insecurity. Ongoing violence and insecurity makes it difficult for development partners to operate effectively in conflict zones. Thereby, humanitarian access is often restricted, further complicating poverty reduction initiatives. This is what I have to say for now. Over to you.
Right. Thank you for the lesson from African context. Now we turn to Southeast Asia because actually we see the report with the conflicts. Conflicts also make the poverty eradication very hard to achieve. And the question is that how have global, regional, and domestic geopolitical uncertainties complicate the Southeast Asian region poverty eradication efforts and growth trajectory for Dr. Ulrich, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Ulrich Schmidt from the World Bank, and maybe I start with a few general remarks on growth and poverty eradication and then come a bit to the conflict. So we put out an economic update regularly every 6 months, and one of the main messages for East Asia and Pacific is that despite COVID disruptions, despite the persistent tensions of geopolitics and so on, the region has actually been growing relatively at stable rates, and the benefits from that growth are generally widely shared. So that is actually good news for East Asia and Pacific as a whole. But compared to the pre-pandemic situation and the potential for the region, the economic performance in East Asia is less impressive. And so growth still hasn't recovered to the pre-pandemic rates, except in Indonesia. And output has also not recovered to the pre-pandemic levels in several countries, especially in the Pacific. What's really important is that, and I'm just saying this in very general terms, it's that the countries need to look really towards reform and identifying new drivers of growth. So that's really the big picture on the growth. On the poverty reduction side, if you look at poverty, growth has been the driver of poverty reduction in East Asia, and particularly if you look at China, China accounts for 3/4 of all poverty reduction globally, driven by economic growth. China lifted 800 million people out of poverty over the last 40 years. And so this has been a global success. And the same is true for Thailand, which has followed a similar path and been very successful on poverty reduction. But how this growth translates into poverty reduction also depends a bit on the quality of growth and the inequality in the countries. So many countries in East Asia are battling with high inequality. And this inequality is often driven by inequality of opportunity early on, which then translates into inequality in the labor market and later in life. There's inequality in how people are protected from shocks. There's a high degree of vulnerability in the region, and these vulnerabilities in the labor market and dislocations, vulnerability to climate change, to health shocks, makes it very hard for households to maintain the progress in poverty that they have made in the past. And then there's a final or a third dimension, really the inequality at the very top of the income distribution raises then questions which are related to politics and governance, and these are very difficult to tackle. And then maybe looking really out, the mega trends of aging, digital technologies, automation, they all will have implications on these inequalities future on, and policymakers need to be serious about how to address these. Let me just say a few words about Myanmar, because I'm covering Myanmar, and since we're talking about conflict, Myanmar is really the country in the region that has slipped back into conflict since 2021. And it has, as my previous panelists mentioned, had immediate impacts on poverty and on the economy overall. We estimate that Myanmar's economy is less, or at least 10% smaller than it was at the time of the COVID and the coup. We have also recent data from our household survey across Myanmar, which has shown that poverty rates have reversed dramatically from, I think, 17% in 2020 back to more than 32% now. And we see this active conflict, and of course this has impacts on school enrollments, on human capital, access to health. As the UN agencies, our partners, have pointed out, we have, I think, about 18 point something million people in humanitarian need. We have serious food security issues. So here the story has gone completely opposite to what we have seen in East Asia elsewhere. Thank you.
I have some more questions about Myanmar situation, because it seems like we still don't see the end of the light tunnel, and if the conflict persists like this, how do you estimate the poverty eradication efforts in Myanmar?
Yeah, at the moment it goes backwards, right? It's going the other way, and of course we try with our analysis to differentiate a little bit and distinguish what happens in rural areas and urban areas. And so while poverty has been traditionally been concentrated in rural areas, we now see poverty increasing or catching up in urban areas, also among people with higher education levels. So that is a particular worrisome development that also has to do with the fact that in urban areas, probably the jobs and employment opportunities are no longer there as they were in if developments had, economic developments had proceeded as they were until up to 2020 pre-COVID.
Thank you. So now let's talk about Thailand. As we see in the presentation earlier, that Thailand also has the conflict, and we have the highest rate of the poverty in the province that are bordering, that are in the border area. So about Thailand's situation, the domestic problem, combined with the global and regional geopolitical tensions, how did it impact Thailand's socio-economic prospects?
We have to accept that Thailand is the very open socio-economic society, long time, back to the Ayutthaya period, several hundred years ago. Economically, I think Thailand foreign investment also very huge, either direct or the portfolio investment. For the foreign trade alone, export and import combined is bigger than the value of the Thai GDP. At the same time, I think the service sector, particularly tourism, also play a very crucial role for the development of the Thai economy. That means that the more they have the escalating conflict among the superpower, either the Western superpower or the Eastern superpower, they're going to affect Thailand very heavily, both directly and indirectly. Because as we can see that currently the situation of the geopolitics and also geoeconomic has been expanding and become more serious. So that means that for Thailand, if we want to further develop, particularly to reduce the poverty problem, we have to manage this external factor more effectively. How could we manage the uncontrollable factor for Thailand? I think that first, internationally, how could we rebalance ourselves among the conflicting superpower? So that means that how could we implement the neutral and non-aligned diplomacy? That is one of the very, very important prerequisites for the development opportunity of Thailand. Secondly, I think that for our neighboring country, I think that from now on, the regionalization may be more important than the globalization. We have to focus more and more to the neighboring country, including the Myanmar. And you know that Myanmar and Thailand, how closely we related in any aspect, economically, socially, even politically. So how could we manage, particularly the ASEAN member? It let me recognize the importance of the ASEAN community. That means that ASEAN community have three pillars, three important pillars. The economic pillar is the AEC, ASEAN Economic Community. The second pillar is the ASEAN Political and Security Community. And the third one is ASEAN Social and Cultural Community. So how could we increase and strengthen the collective effort among the ASEAN members? I think that is very important, and particularly from now on, it's not only the AEC or ASEAN Economic Community. I think that ASEAN Political and Security Community is going to play more increasing role. So how could we cooperate together? How could we unite together to have the collective effort to deal with the global dynamism, with very uncontrollable to us? That is the second thing. And the third thing, in the national level, how could we implement the country that have stronger socio-political economic development? That's also very important. So that means that I think that this one, I think that we should also think about what Mr. Danusha, the Secretary General of the Economic and Social Development Council, just said before us. I think that several detailed criteria the Council using to promote the country development, especially for the poverty eradication. That's also very important. How could we pursue the 5 items such as to have a better healthcare, to have the better education, to reduce the inequality in Thailand? As we can say that currently the equality problem is so very phenomenal here in this country. And then also other factors, and particularly how to pursue the 17 criteria of the SDG. Then also very important condition and criteria that we can pursue, that we can strengthen the stronger socio-political economic development here in this country. And particularly, how could we cope with, because as we can see that, I think even now or in the future to come, I think the gap of the cooperation of the relationship of the global superpower going to be bigger and bigger. So how could we strengthen ourselves? I think that is the most important one. So how could we create a sort of better basic needs among the Thai people? How could we reduce the household debt? And we could see that currently the household debt of Thailand is close to 90% of the value of the Thai GDP. I think this sort of the detailed thing that we should think about. But anyway, I think that ASEAN, including Thailand, are going to be in between the conflict and confrontation of the superpower country. And moreover, how could we cope with the 5 or 6 TION, TION, that going to determine the pattern of the global development from now on, or even currently. The first one is the rapid digitalization under the generative AI. Secondly, the very quickening financialization. As you can see that currently the financial sector is going to play more dominant role than the real sector. Thirdly, how to cope with the climatization. As we can see that currently the problem of the climate change, global warming, going to be much more serious and in danger to our planet. Fourthly, how could we cope with the medicalization? Because we can also see the very quickening medical development globally and nationally. And fifth factor is how to cope with the virtualization. You can see that people around the globe now not only living in the physical world, we are living in the virtual world. We have the double body, one in the physical world, in the other in the virtual world. So how could we manage this kind of society? And sixth, the last one, how to cope with the geopolitics and geoeconomic friction, particularly that originated from the superpower. That is the thing that we should pursue and should think about.
So that is the overall picture of Thailand. But now let's focus on the community with Ms. Varankana. So what are the challenges that communities face in terms of reducing poverty and promoting equal opportunities? And how do you see conflicts and injustice impacting the livelihoods and social cohesion in Thailand?
สวัสดีค่ะ ขออนุญาตเปลี่ยนเป็นภาษาไทยนะคะ
ได้เลยค่ะ
ถ้าท่านไหนที่ต้องใช้
I speak Thai. For those who need a translation headset, could you please go get the translation headset? I'm speaking on behalf of people. I would like working on the local levels. We have listened to the macro level perspectives, and I would like to tell you about what poverty looks like in relation to conflicts. We have listened to a representative from the SDC, and we are doing good already in terms of poverty eradication, but we cannot defy the fact that we still have poor people, and the theme is conflict. It seems that conflict involves using weapons or direct conflict.
I have been working on natural resources in relation to resources. Actually, we have seen another type of conflicts. It is not direct conflict using weapons. It is silent. It is silent or voiceless in conflict. We can see injustice in this, and it might become, worsened or escalating conflict. I am working at RECOP. RECOP is working on men and forest, the Center for People and Forest. We have been working on forest and community rights for 30 years. Poverty by the law is the name of the case. Poverty by the law can make people poor. This is the highlight I would like to share with you. For example, if we are an individual relying on natural resources, and Mae Hong Son is one of top provinces which are the poorest in the country. I think it is not different from the case to be shared here. And Nan, another province, Nan and Mae Hong Son, have a large areas, forest areas. Most the areas are under the management of the public center. A lot of areas have been declared as forest areas, and they are top provinces with the poverty rates. None. There are poor people there, and they have interesting issues if we want to study about violence and structural poverty. Okay, given a timeline, if we are born in this particular village and this district, and this village originally it was a conflict area into 1992, they came up with an agreement between the Communist Party of Thailand and the Thai government at that time. They said, okay, they would like to coexist, and Nan was an area where there was fighting. Now was a red zone, and there were communist people and Hill tribe people, and people thought that they are others, not belonging to the country. And if a child was born in this area, and this child grows up in a village originally called Red Village when he was 19 years old, and this village was declared a national park because it is a watershed area and it has a lot of forest. It was declared as a national park. It means that child was born and lived that area legally to utilize natural resources and do farming or use forest products under the National Park Act. This is considered illegal against the law. So they were born here a long time ago, and parents have lived there a long time ago. Why it is illegal to do things? This issue was in 2019, but actually the survey was conducted in 2002 to prove who stayed there a long time ago, and there is a cabinet resolution June, and this guy from the birth until the year 22 years old, it is not clear if his activities were illegal or illegal. No one can verify who stayed before that. And they have stayed there, they lived there illegally. Now this person is 34 years old, and there was a coup, NCPO. Realize the issue. You can see high rate of decoration of forest. Since 2014, we can see a huge decrease in forest area. So it was a priority of that coup. The coup members, they said they must stop encroachment and deterioration of forest, and they want to recall forest areas. And some people started doing para-rubber plantation. They were arrested, and para-rubber trees were felled down. This caused fear among local people. They didn't have the courage to do reforestation, and this issue. And in 2019, there was an attempt to amend the law. Then national parks, they accept the fact that there were people in the national parks and they needed to conduct survey who stayed there before. And section 64 was the key section. They identified who lived before that, and they would issue documentation for as deeds for farmland. Since until now, the survey has not led to issuing the deeds or title documentation, and royal decree must be issued. And they have to identify how they can lead their life. And the royal decree said they can stay there for 20 years at a time, and they can hold 20 rights of land. Actually, they use more than one plot and more than 20 rights for farming. If they have land elsewhere, normally local people have more than one plot for farming, but they have to choose that the law requires that they must select just one plot, and they cannot transfer the land to their children. Now that person is 44 years. This guy, he cannot tell if his farmland is legal and illegal, and this varies according to the policies issued by the government. Given the situation, development cannot be implemented. We talk about SDG, sustainable development. SDG on sustainability cannot be done, and the government cannot do this, because this land is not legally recognized. So it cannot be developed, and even investment, not mentioning investment, people, they don't know when or if they will be prosecuted, and villagers are not sure if they would be protected under law. This is a summary. I have just gave example of one village. Actually, this is true to people, 20 rights, protected areas and national park area. We can see this, justice comes late, and you can see an expansion of the areas. I don't know if you can see this. Before 1998, only 6 million rights is where people resided, and 60.5 million right was added. And I'm talking about law enforcement, which cannot be effective. And if we talk about deterioration of ecosystem, we can see this in Chiang Rai, and the situation shows why poverty exists in many areas, because in the areas we don't see injustice, we don't see justice.
มีโอกาสที่จะแบบว่า
Is there any opportunity that we're gonna achieve on this matter? Actually, there is an attempt there is the many times that we try to tackle the problem from the year BE 2545, from the first survey. Actually, prior to that, let's say that people try to figure out, what exists first, people or forest, and then there is the law amendment in the year BE 2562, and then, the more we try to explain or the more measure there might create more problems. Most of the lawyers might not understand about the natural resources and may not understand how local people live with the local resource. When there is a concept that people cannot live with the forest, it become a very boring issue. But the concept that the people cannot live with the forest really exists. When we issue the law, we should really realize that is the natural resource belong to local people. There is no political commitment for solving the problem. One person is born, and when he or she has children, he still is deprived of the right of development.
More than this is just one of the story that hinder the poverty eradication effort in Thailand as well. So now let's turn to the second round, because the first round we focus on the bottleneck, the challenges that lies ahead. Now we focus on the solution of all the challenges. So let's go to Finda. In the African context, and as highlighted in the Global MPI report, peace is essential in alleviating. In your view, what actions are needed to restore peace and support sustainable recovery in conflict affected countries?
Thank you once again. Firstly, I think it's this whole issue of investing in human capital development. Because when you invest in education and healthcare, it is really critical to enhancing resilience. We must increase targeted investments in education, healthcare, and skills development to build resilience and foster human development, particularly in vulnerable and displaced communities. For me, human capital development must be prioritized, even in conflict-affected regions, to break the cycle of poverty. Secondly, understanding and monitoring conflict development nexuses. It is critical to integrate conflict management and reporting into development resource frameworks for better understanding and reporting of general development resource. I'm pleased to note in this direction that Africa Human Capital Development Plus and its partners have designed a prototype online HCD Nexus dashboard that integrates fragility or state insecurity with human capital development indicators for periodic monitoring and reporting. The aim is, of course, to roll it out into states and provinces at the subnational level and countries at the central level. Thirdly, addressing the root causes of conflict. Addressing the root causes of conflicts and improving governance structures to prevent conflicts will reduce poverty sustainably. According to research, addressing these root causes requires targeted interventions that focus on marginalized communities, providing them with equitable access to resources and opportunities. And in looking at that, if you look at the trend in Africa, it is unconstitutional changes, bad elections that leads to conflicts and military coup d'etats, at least in West Africa. We must address this and speak truth to power at all times. And then there's also the issue of building peace building initiatives, scaling up some of these efforts that address local grievances, promote dialogue, and foster social cohesion. These are critical to creating stable environments where development can thrive. We've seen examples of that in Rwanda and in Ghana. And of course, women's economic empowerment or gender equality, and youth, focusing also on youth. We've seen now that there are targeted youth banks being constructed and targeted funding to women, Women's World Banking. ADB has, the African Development Bank has its AFAWA program, which accelerates access to finance for women. Then we also look at promoting economic inclusion and livelihoods. This should be really accentuated in conflict-affected populations, especially where youth and women have been really the targets of conflict. And this can be done through vocational training, entrepreneurship development, and microfinance programs. We also want to look at the collection or collaboration on data collection. Address data gaps in conflict regions by partnering with local agencies and international organizations to improve data collection. This is crucial for measuring progress and adjusting interventions. Two other areas are: one, to ensure accountability and transparency. You need to create systems to track and publicly report on progress towards poverty reduction commitments, building trust among stakeholders and ensuring sustained focus on peace and development goals. Finally, international cooperation and partnerships. There's a need for greater collaboration between governments, international organizations, and development partners to ensure coordinated and targeted interventions in conflict-affected areas. I mean, in my humble opinion, translating the peace dividend into action involves not only restoring peace, but also ensuring that communities have the resources and support needed to rebuild sustainably. This includes strengthening governance, fostering inclusive economic growth, and prioritizing the potential of the protection of essential services, even amid instability. By aligning poverty eradication efforts with peace building and resilience strategies, we can build tangible progress towards lifting conflict-affected populations out of multidimensional poverty and create conditions for long-term stability and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Finda. Now it's turn to Dr. Ulrich. What key global lessons can Southeast Asian countries, including Thailand, adopt regarding strengthening peace-building efforts to promote poverty eradication and inclusive growth at national and subnational levels?
Thank you. That's not a trivial question. Let me start with Myanmar again, and then I can come to Thailand a little bit. But Thailand I know less, but Myanmar I'm actively involved. So if I just recall a bit the situation that we face in Myanmar right now, we have an active conflict that has spread to pretty much all of the country, right? It has gone from border areas, from the traditional conflict-affected areas into the heartland of Myanmar. There are about 3.4 million people internally displaced, which are on the move in different parts of the country. And as I said previously, we have about 18 million, according to UN estimates, 18 million people that are in need of humanitarian assistance. At the same time, the international efforts through ASEAN, the UN, or through bilaterals have not really moved much towards any kind of settlement, so it's really a very active, volatile environment. And from the World Bank's perspective, we were in these circumstances, we were no longer able to implement our general program through the government, right? We have policies that prevent us in these situations to implement our large-scale investment projects. But we have a strategy institutionally that deals with fragility, conflict, and violence. And in this case, this what we call FCV strategy applies, and it requires us to be adaptive to the circumstances. And the first step that we took after our investment lending was put on hold, we focused entirely on an analytical program to provide not only us, but also our development partners in the UN, the bilateral partners, with the data and information as much as possible on what is happening in key sectors. That covers the macroeconomic side, the financial sector side, but also goes into health and education, access to these services, water, sanitation, energy, agriculture, and so on. So we have a very active analytical program, and we share this very widely, at least biannually, with our partners to see that we get a common understanding of what the impacts of the conflicts on the countries are. Second, we had some resources from donors, trust fund resources, which we reprogrammed and were able to target vulnerable communities. And the key for us here is to be very flexible in geographical areas. If you have conflict emerging in one area, you need to be able to adjust your transfer of resources to other areas where you can operate. So the flexibility and adaptation of that approach is very important. The second, for us as World Bank, is we need to rely on implementation partners who have capacity and infrastructure in the country. And in our case in Myanmar, it's primarily the United Nations. So we have worked with UN agencies in Myanmar who have implementation capacity, who have negotiated access to project area or to areas where UN agencies work already. And we have been able to channel our resources through these arrangements. one of the key lessons from international global engagement in conflict was that we decided on a mix on short-term interventions that dealt with immediate humanitarian needs like access to food, access to nutritional resources for women and children, particularly infants, and then gradually moving towards interventions that help strengthen resilience or are income generating and have a slightly longer time horizon than these immediate interventions, going from short term to kind of medium term towards long term interventions. So that's what we have adopted in Myanmar as approach in the current circumstances. We call that in our own kind of jargon the resilience spectrum. You know, you go from short-term to medium, longer-term interventions depending on the circumstances. The idea was really, can we preserve some of the development gains that have been made in the last decade and not let everything go down the drain? To say it a little bit sloppily, but that was really how much can we preserve of what was achieved before. Myanmar is not yet in a stage where we can take a longer-term perspective with counterparts where there is an active reconciliation process or settlement process in place. So we really rely on these short-term interventions. In Thailand, I'm not that familiar with the conflict areas in Thailand, but I think this has also been a long history in the southern provinces, right? There have been lots of grievances of the Muslim community, if I'm correct on this. And here the question is really, can we, and we have only some small analytical engagement in these areas, whether we can find some common ground on a regional development agenda that is very much focused on skill development, on inclusion, on addressing grievances, particularly focused on inclusion of women through access to education and economic opportunities. So that is a much more deliberate and process with a longer term outlook than we face right now in Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some special question for you and also Finda, just a little bit, because both of you have mentioned about the conflicts and we've learned about, many people, many sectors try to reduce poverty. The social sector, the civil society, the NGO, international organizations. But what about the political will? Is it important? It's maybe the most important part to help alleviating the poverty in the conflict areas. Maybe Finda, you want to answer this question?
Yes, I was trying to answer. Yeah, the political will is the most important. Now, remember, in a conflict situation, you have competing constraints. And mostly in conflicts, you would see a government wanting to invest more in defense sectors and not in areas that would address the challenges of human development and human security. So it takes that strong leader and that strong cabinet and an even stronger parliament, given the separation of powers, to actually force that political will to ensure that money is being targeted in areas of conflict. And our leaders need to understand that by in fact investing in people, it goes a long way to reducing conflicts. For example, in the Sahel region, a lot of these young and unemployed people are joining the ranks of terrorists. It's happening also in northern Nigeria. So if you have the political will to invest in your people, it would allay the fears of the young people. The second question for me also, which is the bigger question in terms of political will, is to make sure that we do not tamper with our constitutions. As I said earlier on, it is these unconstitutional changes, in my experience as the first female vice president of the ECOWAS Commission, that led to a lot of the military coups that we see in the Sahel region. So political will is key. Thank you.
Thank you. So now for, you want to add something? Okay, so now for Thailand, Dr. Sompok, what are the ways of promoting collective efforts and people-centric approach to poverty eradication in our country, I mean, amid the global and regional uncertainties?
I think that peace is the prerequisite of development opportunity. Without peace, lot of resources, either financial resource, human resource, or even time resource, will be used for the defense and security purposes. So how to restore peace is the first precondition that we should think about. Externally, it's uncontrollable for Thailand, but internally, that is I think more crucial and more important for the Thailand to manage. I think that our World Bank representative already mentioned about the problem in Myanmar. We have also accept that currently millions Myanmar people working here in Thailand, not only Myanmar, also from Cambodia, from Laos, etc. Altogether, I think that it is about 20% of the Thai total workforce that coming from the neighboring country. So how could we create a society that people can live together, work together peacefully? That is very, very important. So that is one thing that we should think about. Without that, any problem, including the poverty reduction, going to be very, very difficult. I think also that to create a better society, peaceful society, we also have to accept that Thailand is moving to be more cosmopolitan society. We have a lot of people from foreign countries staying here in Thailand. Currently, even people around the globe coming to Thailand to practice the Thai boxer and also another purposes. So how could we manage this kind of more cosmopolitan society? That is the duty of the responsible organization and people. So how could we cooperate in at least the sector, public sector, private sector, and particularly also the non-governmental sector altogether? How could we collectivize the kind of effort to manage the appropriate policy, appropriate system to reduce the inequality, to eradicate the poverty, etc. And moreover, I think that from now on, the smart, green, appropriate policy and system, and particularly, as I already mentioned, the peaceful society. That is the pattern that we should pursue. Otherwise, anything, either poverty eradication, climate change, etc., cannot be resolved.
Okay. So now in the community level, Kun Warankana, in what ways can community participation and empowerment initiatives be scaled up to address the multidimensional aspect of poverty in Thailand?
อาจจะขออนุญาตกลับไปที่
I go back to the first question. Actually, now we can still see that there are poor people. This comes from the fact that the government and law have no will You mentioned political will. They don't have political will to address the issue. So poverty and conflicts to persist in Thai society or the Thai structure, social structure. So it is necessary to raise this as political agenda. And there must be a clear will that people. This should be addressed. Poverty cannot be eradicated if the law or the power of government don't have a will to address this. I think this must be a prerequisite. The second part is Thailand. When we said, oh, we have no poor people, we are successful in terms of achieving SDG 1. One side is a good thing, positive thing for the country. The other side, you can see pocket poverty. We cannot see this, or maybe we overlook or we ignore this type of poverty. It means we put it in the carpet. We hide this, or maybe we close our eyes and we say that we don't see this. And it is frightening for our country when group with poverty from generation to another generation and still poor. This is a big issue, but we close our eyes and we put it under the carpet and we say it doesn't exist. What should we do to amplify this? And maybe the government should pay more attention to this. Another issue is when we see deterioration of the environment and we see the issues from this, and I think that people in local area, we can see that people point fingers to people what to do and they blame people. They put faults on people. And they said people in watershed areas and forest areas must be adapt themselves in a particular way. But we cannot see adaptation. In deteriorating forests, they said local people destroying this and economic crops. We don't consider the supply chain leading to reforestation, producing crops. Maybe investors, capitalists, or business people should be responsible as well. There is no law that governs or penalize people who do things impact on this. To address poverty, we need capital, we need funding, we need investors making investment that try to minimize or eradicate poverty. We want investors and investment from the public sector in forest areas where there are poor people and they are in multi-dimensional poverty, not only monetary poverty, but a lack of education or a lack of jobs as well. It requires investment. Investment in forestry is a big thing. If you look at statistics, maybe any SDC you can help me. You can see little investment in forest areas. We talk about policies, for example, BCG policies. But BCG and people in forest areas, we don't identify how we can release them from the poverty trap. Forestry can respond to the poverty reduction. We don't talk about how to add the value of forest products. We don't know. No, we have to think about value addition to the forest products. We need to look at this at 2 dimensions. When we talk about problems of poor people, and we have co-responsibility as investors, or we are consumer as well, and we need to share responsibility and we use raw materials and to make profit from our production.
Few minutes left and we have another last question that 8 minutes, and we have the last question that I would like all of you to answer the same question, which is what is a key action point to tackle the root cause of conflict and poverty and enable people living in the poverty to have a better chance in building their life and communities. So maybe we start with Finda. One key action point that you want to highlight.
Yes, for me, as I said, is speaking truth to power and for civil society organizations to play their role, because they can keep, our governments and our leaders on track. The youth and the women, they can do so.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Ulrich.
So maybe I take a developmental perspective on that and not a political one. So I think education and health and social protection are key intervention areas to address these weaknesses and allow the poor and vulnerable to build their livelihoods and contribute to growth.
Thank you. And Dr. Sompop. Actually, you still have like 5 minutes.
How could we have the good governance, have the good transparency, credibility, and accountability? That is one of the very important preconditions for everything, for any kind of development, including the poverty eradication. So that means that we should have the good policy, good system. Civil society also one of the key factor to create this kind of governance into the Thai society. Without that, we cannot achieve anything.
ขอบคุณค่ะ and คุณวรังคณา
ก็คิดว่า
I think first of all, how are we gonna, similar to Dr. Sompop, how we gonna make it to be good governance for forest management? The word good governance, it means that we have to see that everyone has common right and to accept that other people have the right to access development as well if we respect and believe in that right. And the second thing is the political will and sincerity to tackle the problem of the government. What we see, we know what the problem is, we have solutions, but we don't choose to implement timely. And the late justice is injustice. So we have to speed up our action of the government sector. That should be prerequisite.
Q&A session, and we open for the session from the audience, I mean online audience and also the audience on ground. Anyone who wants to ask the question, please raise your hand.
ค่ะสุกัญญาทองธำรงนะคะจาก
สุกัญญาทองธำรง from UNDP. I would like to ask คุณวรังคณา on the 29 October, the government announced the postponement of the regularization of people who are stateless. What kind of benefits, what is the benefit to people confronting the issue as the case you presented? And I think the question is a timely question. Given what I told you, the act on national park, actually there are 2 acts in relation to protect areas, National Park Act and the act on conservation and preservation of wildlife. There must be a royal decree to identify who will have a rights, whose rights will be recognized, who can stay there, and the proposed royal decree, which came later, specify that people who have a right, that right must be of Thai nationals. Actually, it was not identified before, and many preserved area are along the border area. The fact that people are stateless or they are in the process of nationality verification, it is very important, and it is an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed. And the fact that we have that royal decree, it states that people who can enjoy that right must be Thai nationals. It means we exclude who are in the process. I think it must be accelerated so that those people can enjoy the right. Otherwise, the right might be abused or violated, because they are in the process of verification.
Maybe Donald Trump won't like it. Any other question? มีไหมคะถามคำถาม
Any questions? You can ask questions. Even young people at the back, Ajahn Sompop said, young people at the back should ask questions as well. Can I speak Thai? Why this DA team? Okay, you can ask Ajahn Sompop as well. May I share something with you? I think in Thailand, given cases on land and forest across the country, 18 million people have been involved in cases. They are in illegal land or land prohibited by law. If we don't address this, maybe the poverty will be passed from generation to another generation, because it seems that we haven't addressed this. We just have new law. People don't access production factors and resources of the government. They don't access policy protection. No way we cannot overcome or conquer poverty. This is the first thing. And the second thing, which is linked to nationality, you know, we imprison around 480,000 people over 40 years. They didn't do anything wrong. We imprisoned them with ID card, long processes. Some people take 10 or 20 years. What? Okay. And the cabinet resolution said this must be completed within 5 days and 10 days. It means that we will give nationality of foreigners who have been stay in Thailand. Actually, there are ethnic minority groups. They entered Thailand legally. But, you know, 20 years ago, the survey was conducted. 440,000 people. You have imprisoned them with. They didn't do anything wrong. How can they overcome poverty? Okay, the cabinet resolution said, okay, we need to give them Thai nationality, and after that we can do verification later, which I think we should advocate this, and we think we need to educate people in Thai society so that they support eradication of poverty.
The idea with him on this issue. So maybe we move on to another question. Do we still have time? Okay, เชิญค่ะ
Please. I don't know if I should speak Thai or English. There is a saying, the poor is always in the wrong place.
But many of the poor are actually living in a place that didn't belong to them. And we never really consider relocating them. So my question is, if relocation should be the option, who should be the host of this? ใครควรเป็นเจ้าภาพครับ
Who should be the host? Who is responsible for recollecting people in an area where they are no longer poor?
Answer this question. Very, very difficult question. Pinda, you understand the question?
No, I don't. What was the question? I couldn't get the translation.
So the question is that, you know, like many of the poor people are living in a place that don't really belong to them. So we get that one case when they live in the forest and they cannot prove their rights. So they don't have any option at all, because they don't have the ability to move by themselves, and they cannot make a living out of that piece of land because it didn't belong to them. They don't even have the right to live there. And actually, like many of the poor people are living at a place that they cannot escape poverty by themselves. So I think what if the relocation of these people to the better place that they can make a living, should not that be the option? And if that is going to be the option, who is going to be responsible for this? Like which organization, which minister, like who should be the one that move this?
Land tenure issues are really controversial, even in Africa. What I would say is that the governments must take development to these rural areas, to these deserved, communities, and to ensure that there's equity. First of all, equity which is correcting the historical wrongs, and then ensuring that also that there is equality so that it's accessible to everybody regardless of your ethnicity and your region of origin. It is very controversial, but land belongs to the government in trust, so it must be the government and its partners and the communities finding common ground. Let me give you an example. We have this kind of thing in Africa in an issue of the farmer-herder conflicts. And when I was at the Economic Community of West African States, we found ways in resolving it to make sure that the cattle herders can come and graze their cattle during the rainy season and then retreat and allow people to continue with the farming. So conflict resolution is key, but the responsibility lies with the government. Thank you.
You want to answer this question? Anyone want to answer?
ขอบคุณค่ะ
This is a $1,000,000 question. Thank you very much. So it's gonna make us to be able to have more dialogue. We have to start from where is right, what is right and what is wrong. Who will say what is right and what is wrong? He said poor people are in the wrong place. Why is wrong for them to be there? They have been living there since their ancestor, and how come it's become the wrong thing for them to do? It's not like they are in the wrong place, but who define what is right and wrong, and to have power to define what is right and is wrong. Who has that power? You have to ask, let's say that go to the first question, that who's gonna define whether you have the right and whether you're gonna be able to get out of poverty or not. That is my answer. And there are many cases. There are the goodwill to relocate people. There are many extreme cases in the world with a good hope that they want to really relocate people to get out of poverty. But you know, it does not solve the problem. We move the problem from one place to another place, but it's like we aggravate the problem to start at the new place to get out of poverty. They must have a lot of capitals, a lot of assets. When you do not have your own social capital, it's already a problem. We need to have a long debate for the solution of this problem.
We run out of time. Now we just like 5 minutes delay already. So please give a big round of applause to our keynote speaker, our panelists, for them. And thank you so much for being here with us. ขอบคุณนะคะ Thank you to Dr. Ulrich Schmidt, Manager of World Bank Thailand and Myanmar, Dr. Sompop Manarangsan, President of Panya Piwat Institute of Management, and Ms. Varankana Ratanarat, Country Program Director for RECOF, and last but not least, Ms. Finda Kuroma, the former Vice President of ECOWAS Commission. And I am Thanchanok Jongyuding. Thank you so much, and I give the stage back to Kun Kankron.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Kun Thanchanok, as well, for sharing insight, experience, and also perspective, either in Myanmar, Thailand, and also in the African context. So, to close our program, I would like to invite Ms. Irina Goyunova, UNDP Deputy Resident Representative to Thailand, to deliver her closing remarks. Please welcome.
Good afternoon. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, on behalf of UNDP, once again, I would like to express my appreciation to all of you for participating in today's launch of the 2024 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report. As we bring this event to a close, we reflect on the critical discussions and insights that were shared throughout today's event. We've heard voices and opinions from few people, Dr. Sabina Alkir and Yanchon Zhang's presentation on the alarming intersections between poverty and conflict. We've heard Mr. Danusha Pichayanat's emphasis on Thailand's forward-looking strategies for peace building and poverty eradication. And we've heard panel discussion talking about strategies for peace building and poverty eradication. And all of them have underscored the urgency of this moment. The report findings are stark. 1.1 billion people live in multidimensional poverty, with nearly 500 million residing in conflict-affected areas. These numbers remind us that poverty is not just a question of income, but a multidimensional deprivations in health, education, living standards, all of which are exacerbated in areas affected by war, fragility, and low peacefulness. Today's event highlighted that progress is possible, as evidenced by the significant reduction in multidimensional poverty globally and in Thailand. However, the challenges ahead are immense. Our panel discussion made it clear that addressing these issues require an integrated approach, one that combines poverty alleviation, peace building, and humanitarian assistance to tackle the root causes of both conflict and poverty. This report is not just a call for action, but a foundation for transformative change. Achieving the SDGs, particularly the goal on ending poverty in all its forms, will require coordinated efforts across governments, civil society, and international organizations. The lessons shared today give us hope and direction, that they also remind us that without peace, care, there cannot be a sustainable poverty reduction. Let us leave here today committed to working together in building resilient systems and prioritize both peace and development. Thank you for your engagement and for dedication to creating a future where no one is left behind. Khap kun ka.
Thank you so much, Ka Irina. As Ms. Irina mentioned, that this report doesn't cover only the information, but also calls to action. So anyone, like those who are interested in our report, you can scan the QR code on the screen to download and extract the insights from the report. Dear distinguished guests, this concludes our event, and thank you all for your participation and for your commitment to a more sustainable and equitable future. We look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Thank you so much. สวัสดีค่ะ
Please do not forget to return your translation headset right away. Please. Thank you very much and enjoy your day.